into the old apartment. This is where we used to live. Broken glass, broken hungry, broken hearts and broken bones. This is where we used to live. Why did you paint the walls? Why did you clean the floor? Why did you plaster over the hole I punched in the door? This is where we used to live. Why did you keep the mousetrap? Why did you keep the dish rack? These things used to be mine. I guess they still are. I want them back. Broke into the old apartment, 42 stairs from the street. Crooked landing, crooked landlord, narrow laneway filled with crooks. This is where we used to live. Why did they pave the lawn? Why did they change the law? Why did I have to break it? I only came here to talk. This is where we used to live. How is the neighbor downstairs? How is her temper this year? I turned up your TV and stomped on the floor just for fun. I know we don't live here anymore. We bought an old house on the Danforth. She loves me and her body keeps me warm. And I am happy here. This is where we used to live. Broke into the old apartment. Tore the phone out of the wall. Lonely memories, fading memories, blending into total tableau. I want them back. I want them back. This is where we used to live. I want them back. This is where we used to live. I want them back. This is where we used to live. I want them back.
Student housing is such a unique industry. The more unique an industry is, the more important it is for that industry to have a resource and a platform to share ideas and data, to determine best practices, and a platform to simply promote networking among the professionals in that industry. That's what we are setting out to provide with Student Housing Insight. But what's even more unique about the student housing industry is how unique those professionals are. They want to make a positive impact on the students and the university communities they serve. They understand they have an opportunity to touch the future. They come to work every day looking for ways to make that future bright. If you're one of those people, come be a part of Student Housing Insight. All right, everybody. Welcome to ShopTalk, October's ShopTalk. Today is Tuesday, October 11th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Wesley Dees, CEO of Student Housing Insight. If you haven't heard about Student Housing Insight, we've got a podcast and would love for you to subscribe to it if you haven't heard of it before. And today we've got a couple of things that we want to chat about as it relates to some events coming up and some other things. We'll get into that in just a second, but wanted to go through some house cleaning items really quick in regards to this particular platform and what we're using today. So this is Webinar Jam. It's a little unlike a Zoom call, so I want to go through a couple of things here. First of all, chat. We encourage you to chat with everybody that's here. You can also do private chat. It's over in the right-hand side of your screen. You just click on the chat button at the top, down at the bottom, determine who it goes to, and chat away. We've also got question and answer. This is going to be important for you guys to use if you've got any questions for myself or the panelists. I'm going to check it here versus in the chat because sometimes chat gets a little crazy and I can't always see the questions. So if you've got any specific questions, make sure that you go there to type it in. Then next, request to speak. If you're brave enough to, and your camera's working, if you want to come on to our virtual stage and speak with one of the panelists or bring up something to the group, we highly encourage that. You'll just click on that request to speak button at the top, and then you'll go through a couple little checks with your volume and your video just to make sure everything works. Well, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. There is not going to be an update from NMHC today. Both Dave and Matthew were both out today, so they are not going to be able to provide an update on that. So I do want to go ahead and bring up Charlie from College House to begin talking about what's happened this past year, what's happened this past month when it comes to pre-leasing, and we've got a lot to go over with that. Let me see if Charlie, hopefully you're coming up here soon. There we go.
What's up?
How are you doing, Charlie?
Oh, we're good. We're good in my lovely office. The lighting's great, isn't it?
It is. It is. How did you guys have any damage from at all from the hurricane?
No. It skipped around. I think it ended up going through more South Carolina than it did to Atlanta, but everybody freaked out in town, and I was actually going to a wedding and moved some flights around. And completely sunny weekend last week. So,
well, I really hate that we missed your panel at NMHC in Florida, and the NMHC had to be canceled because I was looking forward to that. Looking forward to going through some of this end of year information that you were going to present. But you did have a fantastic webinar last week with student housing business, and had a great panel there. If you haven't seen that, to our audience members, I strongly encourage you to go out to Student Housing Business their website, and they should have a link up to the recording there. But it was fantastic. But hey, let me pull up your slide. Just a second here.
Let's see. Yes, I've got it put up on my computer. I think you're running.
I've got it here.
There we go. Beautiful.
I'm going to change the size of our pictures here so people can see it too.
There we go.
There we go. So jump into it. I think you want to go over kind of a year to date versus just jumping in to see what happened this past month, correct?
Yeah. So I think it's important to kind of give. I don't think with the panel that was supposed to happen at NMHC, we're going to run through all the year-end numbers. Which are great. And I think that kind of sets the tone to kind of talk about, present day where, the leasing world is on fire in the best way. And kind of start the conversation there. So if you want to skip over to just kind of the year-over-year numbers, I want to give a little context there. Great. The formatting looks great there. Okay, perfect. So national occupancy, so we called this on September 19th. We had to wait until the last few markets on the West Coast moved in. We're from 93.7%, about 2.5% year over year. We'll get into how that breaks out by your different market sizes, different types. But for the sake of our coverage there, that's 261 markets across the U.S. So encompassing not just your tier 1 universities, but a lot of your tier 2, tier 3 markets. One of the things that's most encouraging that I see here, I know the Midwest and the Southeast weren't as affected from the COVID-19 pandemic. bounced back pretty easily. But looking at Northeast and the West and even the Southwest, the numbers look great there. Up, the Northeast 2.5%, the Southwest, 3.2%, and the West Coast up, 2.7%. So great to see that across the board from a standpoint of your national view.
Yeah,
encouraging to see.
The 1.14 million beds. How much did that increase from last year?
So from a standpoint of how much that increased, I think the context was last year's year-end report. We were covering 230 markets or so. So we added, roughly 31, if you will, markets since then. But from a beds perspective, right, there's new devs every year. I think there was somewhere around 35,000 beds that came online last year, which again is still low nationally. But as properties transition from, I know there's been a handful of sales, even more recently, of properties that have transitioned from student to conventional in some of those markets. It's probably another 50, 60,000 beds that are accounted there.
Gotcha.
And then as we look at rates, I know, as we look at this in context of the leasing year this year, which we'll get into, of course, I think everybody was kind of a little bit shocked at how quickly a lot of things leased up and maybe didn't hit all of their tiers, which again is being accounted for as we look at the leasing numbers this year. But as we look at it, across the U.S. See this. Sorry, I can't see it with our pictures down there for the average rate per bed in the Southeast. You see the Southeast and the Southwest seeing a lot of that rent growth there. Texas, there we go, Arizona, and then getting into your Southeast markets. Again, you can bring up a little bit. You can jump your rate per bed a little bit more from a percentage basis as you get into these lower, 775, 795. But markets across the Southeast traditionally doing well. I know there's a lot of new devs coming in there, which is driving some of that rent growth, but also from an enrollment standpoint, a lot of your tier 1 universities, the SEC, the ACC, are settled in there in the Southeast and the Southwest, which is nice to see. One thing that's interesting there from the Northeast side, again, we're talking about how things bounce back from the pandemic. I think a lot of that rent growth is driven by the lack of hesitancy of coming back to school. So I think last year, they were relatively flat from a rent growth, maybe a percentage or two. But nice to see almost about 4% there in the Northeast. So
4.9 nationally. I mean, that's fantastic. Is there any particular market that stands out in your head over the past year that saw some of the biggest year-over-year growth?
Off the top of my head, I think, let's see, your traditional Southeastern markets, Athens, Georgia, go Dogs. But I know Knoxville, Tennessee, West Lafayette. I mean, those last beds in those markets are moving pretty heavily. But from a market level, again, it's from an asset by asset level is really what's interesting, what we're seeing now. But off the top of my head, I mean, some markets that saw some pretty big jumps. I know Austin is good in Texas, and your bigger Southeastern markets. Miami, Florida kind of flew off the shelf given the fact of just what the conventional market's doing there. But everything kind of shaking out now as people are accounting for that in their leasing here early on.
Great. So next slide, we've got the floor plan occupancy percentage. I've got some questions on this one. Maybe you can help out with. But go ahead.
Yeah. Floor plan level occupancy, as everybody should know, or most know, we're able to collect floor plan level occupancy, pre-lease rates, concessions for over 930,000 beds in the student housing industry. But what stands out here to me most is looking at the studios and the 6 bedrooms, and a lot of those are floor plan types that are common in your newer inventory, where builders and those on the development side are leaning more on the studios and the larger unit types. And you see, I mean, the occupancy jumped almost 3%, almost 3.5% there on the studios, and then the 6 bedrooms are up almost 4.5%, 5%. So it's great to see those kind of, I guess, more unique unit types getting traction in these student markets.
A quick question, because and we'll talk about it a little bit on the price here. With the 6 bedrooms, what I'm seeing, maybe you don't necessarily agree with this, but most of the 6-bedroom inventory is newer development coming closer to campus, and that's one of the reasons we're seeing such a big jump there, right?
I think you can make that assumption for sure. The newer inventory in these markets, I mean, the Class A premium product, they're, again, as I mentioned, more prevalent with the 6 bedrooms there, unless it's a cottage product, if you will. Those are seemingly a little further from campus from a land perspective, but seeing the jumps there from an occupancy standpoint just shows I wouldn't say the value, but shows the demand for those Class A pedestrian product. Price, again, as you'll see here, being relatively not a hindrance to students signing leases there, where, I mean, as you see here, the 6 bedrooms, they jumped almost 8%. If my math's correct. No, what is that math there? Almost 765 to 888. I can't do math. I didn't put the numbers on the bottom there. Almost like 12%.
It's only Tuesday.
Yeah. But same thing with the studios. I mean, you see a pretty significant jump there as well. So,
yeah. Well, a couple of things I wanted to point out here, and also to let the audience know, I've pushed out this year-end report as a PDF, so you can actually download that. It'll also be available on our website. Give us about 24 hours to make sure that it's up there, but you can download it now over in the chat area down towards the bottom. But one of the things, and then I've also got a poll that I just launched as well, if you guys want to take a look at that and answer that. But one of the things, going back to this 6-bedroom thing.
Yeah.
4-bedroom has been, that is the biggest type that's out there, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be, pedestrian to campus to 3 miles from campus, right? Mm-hmm. The 884, and I think the reason that so many developers, maybe I'm wrong on this, the reason the developers are building 6 bedrooms is to get something affordable that's close to campus. But here we are. There's a good almost $200 difference between 4-bedroom and that's last year, but about $150 or so between the 4-bedroom versus the 6-bedroom. That's just, I don't know. To me, I think that's saying something about how much we value proximity over anything else in this industry.
Yeah, I also think from a supply standpoint, I mean, there's a ton more 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s and throughout the U.S. From a product type in those markets. So, seeing those jumps from, for those newer inventory, it's not as prevalent of a floor plan. Again, you can see a little bit more change as things move. But I think you're right. I mean, from an affordability standpoint, I mean, and also from the social aspect, just college in general, if you can put 6 people in one and everybody pays $100 less than you would be maybe in a 4-bedroom. I think that holds true, but you still get to be in the premium Class A product that's relatively new.
Gotcha.
Go ahead. And then, so just running through this, I think one of the big things that we look at is as we break out the nuances in the numbers, breaking it out by our levels and how we tier universities. So for market enroll for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, we break out the market enrollments to show that. And I know the question is going to come up. It's like, what do you categorize as tier 1? In West, on our pre-call, we were talking about the UNC Greensboro with UNCG, and then in North Carolina A&T, right? So roughly 30,000+ students in that market. We would categorize that in a tier 1, whereas like a Durham, North Carolina with Duke University may get thrown into the tier 1 sometimes. That would then pull down to our tier 2 markets. But this allows us to kind of count just from a student body perspective. And again, being the largest amount of the beds we track in the U.S. From a tiered market perspective, you can see the big jumps there. I mean, almost 95% occupancy in those tier 1 universities where students are going to school. Again, low supply numbers and market enrollments. at your marquee universities up in a decent amount. I think it's driving a lot of that, and especially from the investor interest, right? I don't think many people, if you look at the news, right, enrollments are down, but if you go market by market in the tier ones, a lot of those are actually growing pretty significantly.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that quite a bit today. So
yeah. So I mean, you're up, from almost 92% to almost 95% in those tier one markets. I mean, there's some markets there was maybe a bet or two left from an immediate move-in standpoint. So I think that's a good indicator of the health. But again, we show your tier 2, tier 3 markets to help. A lot of our clients are operating in some of those, and they're still above, still up to 2.5% there. Even in some of those smaller, more unique markets across the U.S. So it's great to see those numbers jump.
Yeah, absolutely. So just so I'm clear, the tier 1 is not necessarily our Power 5, and I mean, the very may well be, but you're going solely off of enrollment in this breakdown of tiers versus being a flagship university or something like that.
Yeah, and I think a good example would be like a Kennesaw State University. There's like 40,000 plus students. You may know Atlanta, you may know Athens, but the rent growth and the occupancy in that market doesn't operate like a tier 2 university. So it just helps us kind of draw a hard line as opposed to just saying, hey, they're in the ACC, throw them in, the Power 5 or the tier 1, et cetera. So it's just another way to look at it. But I think, if you rolled everything up, you may add a couple tier 1s, to the tier 2 sector and vice versa. If you went solely off of the big name university, if you will.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
So let's talk about this year.
It's been interesting. It's only a few weeks into it.
I mean, yeah. So we started tracking this that next weekend. So that was the 23rd, and a lot of groups had already been moving. I mean, there's multiple properties in Clemson and Knoxville, West Lafayette, even Austin that are ripping and roaring. Hitting. I was talking to one of our clients, and they're hitting daily tiers, right? So it's kind of crazy to see how things are moving from a standpoint of leasing performance. Up roughly about 6% year over year. So hot out the gate. I think I can't see. Let me move down on my side so I can talk about the Southwest side. But the Southwest, seeing they're almost up 10. What is that? Almost 11% there. College Station is off to the races. Austin, Texas, a lot of these bigger markets. In the Southeast, again, I mentioned the the Knoxville, Tennessees of the world, in Clemson, in the Midwest also. You're up almost 9% there, 8.5% there as well. But what's interesting is you look at the West. I think coming off of the California state schools being online from COVID, things were moving, and I think that sense of urgency may be a little less. I wouldn't say less urgent, but
that's interesting.
Off to again, it's October 11th. This date is again as of last Friday on the 7th.
Right.
Things are moving depending on what day the Monday runs off of. People may be kicking things off, but we're already up roughly 6%. I would imagine if we looked at these numbers on a weekly basis, we may be close to 30% by the end of the month, maybe even a little higher.
Okay. And these percentages are pulled off of, was this last Friday? That's typically
10-7. So, it's crazy. We're looking at, we're looking at some of these markets that, haven't really started. It's kind of interesting to kind of see what's, Austin, there's big lease ups happening, and a lot of them are, up, 25-30% of it. So great to see things kind of moving in a big way. And I think one thing to note, I know we don't have this on the slide, but we'll have this on our biweekly report as we move forward, is that from a rates perspective. I think people are getting more aggressive. And if you tuned into our webinar last week, we talked with some with Jen Cassidy and Brenna Thiessen and Andrew Layton about just what they're seeing from a rent growth perspective internally. And a lot of that is, making sure that you're accounting for those tiers and, monitoring how you're doing individually as well as what the market's doing. So, could we have a better start off such a good year?
It's been interesting. I don't want to spoil too much in the, for the panel that we're going to get into a little bit later. But it's been interesting to see what's happened the past 3 or 4 weeks, especially in those tier ones that you mentioned. Hey, I put out a question a little bit ago, and just want to kind of go over the results a little bit. Charlie, since College House has come out, I guess it's been 3 years now.
It has been 3 lovely years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it couldn't have come at a better time with the pandemic. But because we were all looking for transparency in our numbers and trying to make sure that we had something to report back to investors on how the industry was doing as a whole. And I think you've been a big part of that, and certainly want to encourage all the operators out there to certainly sync up with you and see how they can be more involved and become a subscriber, obviously. But I did want one thing that I think it helps a lot of operators with, that I've heard, especially from folks like at CA Ventures. They love it because it kind of fits right into their weekly market reports or their weekly market survey. So I wanted to basically survey our site managers and see how many of them are using it. 11% say that they have access to it, but they don't use it to complete their survey. 47% say that they don't have access to College House, which I know a lot of the companies out there actually do have access, but they're not giving their site managers access, which makes me kind of scratch my head a little bit. But and then, yes, College House is a major component when completing my market survey, 41%. So I'll go ahead and release those percentages out to everybody.
I think a lot of that is company dependent, but I think especially as things are moving and you're looking detailed, right? Hey, how many 4 bedrooms did XYZ move last week? How many we moved? What their price go? I mean, I think that's happening a lot at the corporate level as well. Maybe not just at the site level, but we work with pretty much all institutional groups in the student space. So feel free to reach out internally to your teams and set up some logins. I think it's a great tool, specifically as once we launch our 3.0, which you have here on the screen, come on the 24th, which is 13 days from now. We'll share some more information about that to our current clients and whatnot. But don't take my word.
I'm excited. I'm excited about it. You gave me a sneak peek this summer, and then Adrian went through some of the new utility that it brings during that webinar last week, and I'm excited about it. So and congrats on that. I know it's been a labor of love.
Yes, labor of love, but I think it's predicated on the fact that our clients in the industry believes in transparency, and I think that's a huge win for the space. And I mean, honestly, when you look at the numbers, I'm not saying I had anything to do with it, but it just goes to show, if you know what's going on, everybody can make the right decisions. So if you don't know, we haven't chatted, feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat with you. We'll turn it back over to Wes. But I know there's been some message in the chat, Wes, about sharing the reports. I see Teresa on there. We'll shoot that around after this, and I think it'll be on the website tomorrow. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'm currently sharing it. You should be able to look down at the bottom part of the chat widget or section of the screen. You should be able to see it there and download it. But well, fantastic. Well, hey, I've got a video I'm about to show. We've got a new conference that started about 4 years ago called LeaseCon. It's now turned into LeaseCon TurnCon, and it was recently announced. And wanted to invite Rich Kelly on to discuss that, but he was not going to be available today. So we recorded something on Friday just to make sure that we had an announcement for it. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I've had a couple of issues with videos as I've been testing things out today. So if there's any kind of audio issues or anything that you're having, speak up in the chat and I'll just stop the video. But sometimes we can't control these things. So here we go. Well, Rich, thanks so much for joining. I wish we could have done this live on ShopTalk, but I'll take a recording any day. So thanks for taking some time out on your Friday. Before we even get started talking about LeaseCon, want to thank you for everything Student Housing Business and France Media is doing for certainly for our industry, but also you guys had a fantastic interface back in May down in Austin. So um, really appreciate that. Maybe there's some things on that you may want to talk a little bit about, but I really wanted to focus on LeaseCon and what's now being called LeaseCon TurnCon. And with that being said, I'll just hand it over to you.
Well, thanks, Wes, and thanks for having me. And congratulations on ShopTalk and how well that's going. This will be our fourth annual LeaseCon TurnCon. Did have one hiatus year there in COVID in 2020, and we're bringing it to your hometown. We're coming to Charlotte this year, so we're excited to change things up from a location standpoint. Yes, I don't know if I've told you, Wes, but the cocktail reception is actually at your house, so you might want to tell your wife to start cleaning and prepping things. No, we're going to be downtown in Charlotte. Great hotel where we've done some things before. The space should work really well for LeaseCon. And, what can you say about today's leasing environment? Things are pretty rosy, but that doesn't mean there's not a lot of interesting things to still talk about, as well as speculate about, what may come in the future. So I think, from a leasing and marketing standpoint, it's a very exciting time. I know the owners and operators in the space are fired up because leasing is going so well. So it should be a lot of good things to talk about. And then on the turn side, turn is always going to be with us. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to do it better and how to do it more effectively. And I think the industry is figuring that out. And the TurnCon part of the show will be focusing on that and just, tips for better turn prep, technology that can help you with turn, what's up on the supply chain front, are things finally getting better? What might be the case in, 5-6 months when turn actually starts coming around or you're doing ordering now. So no shortage of good stuff to talk about.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, Charlotte, it's going to be at the downtown or the Uptown Hilton. Is that correct?
Yes. The Hilton, I think they call it Hilton Center City, Charlotte, or Hilton Charlotte Center City.
Yeah. Fantastic. And December 6th and 7th.
Yes. So we will start with roundtables on the afternoon of the 6th. And then the cocktail reception, opening reception on the evening of the 6th, and then full day, 8 to 3 on December 7th.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. As far as registration, and I know that you guys typically do some pretty fantastic group rates when it comes to this conference. Can you give us a little bit of a lowdown on that and where folks can go to register?
Sure. We have our early bird registration rate available till the end of the month. I think it's open till the 27th of October. And where people can register is just go to interfaceconferencegroup.com, click on LeaseCon TurnCon, and then just kind of follow the prompts. And there's a tab at the top of the website, the conference website for registration, pricing, and then to register. One thing I do want to point out, Wes, because we've done this every year and we've had companies take us up on it every year, is, we really encourage owners and operators to bring your team, bring a bunch of folks from the corporate level and bring hopefully a lot of folks from the site level. And we are more than happy to incentivize that through, group registration discounts, things like that. Because I just, when you do a conference, it's really the more the merrier. It's more people that everyone's there to network with, to learn from. And this really is an event that's a learning experience. And I think, people can really kind of reward some of their team members who've been doing a great job by bringing them to an event like this and giving them exposure to a lot of great information and a lot of great networking.
Well, great. Well, I'm excited about it. I've already, talked to a few of the sponsors and folks that are looking to attend, and I think it's going to be, the best one that we've had yet, and looking forward to seeing you in December.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to coming to your city. And I would just say, the leasing environment is going so well right now that I think there should be a lot of very positive discussion, as well as, obviously think about the future, because circumstances change and we have to plan and prepare for that. So the leasing and marketing game is always going on, and it evolves and takes different twists and turns. And right now we're in a great path, so we should have a lot of fun things to talk about.
I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate it, Rich.
Wes, thank you for the opportunity. Again, congrats with ShopTalk, and let's hope that this great run that the industry's on keeps going on.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Wes.
Charlie, anything else coming up this month?
I will say to give some credit to the LeaseCon, that's where we got our start. If you haven't been, it's a great event. I would definitely go there. But no, just stay tuned for some version 3 updates if you're a current client. Thank you so much, Wes, man.
All right, man. Take care.
All right.
John, we'll wait while we're waiting here for Laura and Elena to join. How are things going?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited to bring you on because you're with Granite Student Living. You're their chief revenue officer, and Granite is such of a unique company. You guys are over 10,000 beds. You're a top 10 operator, but you're doing that with scattered sites. You're doing that with central leasing offices, and you've got PBSH communities out there. So this whole thing about leasing and how quickly things are happening this year, I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit more about it. Elena and Laura, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, hey, let's go ahead before I get started with it. I want to go ahead and have you guys introduce yourselves and a little bit about your company. I'd also like to find out a little bit about, or have you share a little bit about what's happened so far this year, year over year, same store, what you guys are seeing from a pre-leasing standpoint.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us, Wes. I'll jump in. My name is Laura Formica. I am the Senior Managing Director of Operations at Core Spaces, and I oversee the student housing and build-to-rent portfolios for the property management division. We have 38 student housing properties, a little over 23,000 beds, and we're seeing really great momentum so far this year across our 22 markets.
Our company was founded in 2008, based in West Lafayette, and we've since expanded to 16 other markets. I think we're in 8 states and have a little over 10,000 beds. But we manage a little over 400 properties, so anything from single-family homes to larger purpose-built properties in Tier 1 all the way down to Tier 3 college markets.
I am Elena Jackson. Hi. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at PeakMade, which is a fully integrated third-party management company, and I oversee the sales and marketing strategy for new developments. We manage 64 student housing properties, which is about 33,000 beds, and are currently pre-leased at about 9%, which is 3% ahead of where we were this time last year. So super excited about that. We're in line for same store portfolio. We're currently occupied at 97%. So we had a phenomenal lease up last season, and I'm super excited to talk about this topic because it's a hot one right now.
Well, fantastic. Well, again, I'm titling this, "Is Everyone Experiencing Early Renewals and Pre-leasing?" So not a too catchy title there, but let me kind of give some background on where this came from. Each week I meet with a leadership committee for ShopTalk and just talk with them about, hey, what's going on in your world that we want to make sure that we're talking about as far as topics for ShopTalk. And pretty much immediately, this was like, I think September 19th was when we met last, and they were already saying, hey, we know a lot of schools have overbooked. That's causing some, increased demand on our side. Really want to find out if that's changing up strategy for any of the operators out there. So I wanted to talk about that. And then literally like a week later, I get this email, which Laura, this is probably the main reason that we went to you to be on this, since Ben stuck his hand up and said, hey, we've been seeing something here.
Yes. Ben voluntold me to come speak on it.
Yeah. And so Ben is their managing director for strategy and research at Core Spaces. And he says this: we've seen leasing this year kick off sooner than any year I can remember in the industry. And I'm hearing that renewal percentages for this early in the leasing season are really high. I'm wondering if that's just a core or the entire industry. Do you think you can have renewals and pre-leasing as a topic of a future Shop Talk? It would be great to go around the horn and see how everyone is doing, and to hear if we think there might be a shift in the mindset of students now to renew earlier. So yeah, that's what today's panel is. And because we do want this to be, kind of an interactive around the horn has been said. Panel, just again want to remind everybody about both the chat as well as the Q&A, and then also the request to speak function. Would love for some of you guys to come up, especially some of the chief operating officers and folks that are looking at this every single week. I would love for you to jump on and give us a little bit of background on what you are seeing in the market. So just hit that request to speak button, and I can bring you up. I want to go back really quick and say we did kind of see this coming. Certainly in mid-July, we started seeing a lot of reports of schools that were overbooking on housing, that were having record enrollment for freshmen. And I kind of just want to go through this a little bit and, see some of the headlines that we saw. But of course, back there on the first one, Charlotte Observer here, at a market that's close to me, and my alma mater as well. We started back when we mentioned on the podcast, back in July, Greta, who's one of our co-hosts, found on a Reddit before it even hit the news that, this was going to end up being an issue at UNCC. And sure enough, there was a lot of publicity around it. And if there was anything left in the market, it quickly was taken up. And then just go around the country here. University of Iowa, they took a dorm offline a few years ago, and, they were planning on replacing it, not ever opening it. They ended up having to open it anyway. FAMU, same thing. University of North Florida. Howard, this is in the Washington Post. I think we all know about this market. University of Tennessee in Knoxville, they had to go out and secure the Holiday Inn for students. I think they've got mostly transfer students there, but that's something I just, as a parent, I can't imagine having to send my, son or daughter off to school, and all of a sudden, where I thought they were going to stay, they're now going to have to stay in a hotel that's, kind of away from everything. So I could see the anxiety with parents, starting to say, okay, well, what are we going to do next year? But we did see several other universities go out and secure hotels as well. Texas State had to literally like a week beforehand, before school started, they had to send out assignments that, hey, we're going to put you in triples instead of doubles. And then CCU, or Coastal Carolina University, same thing. They had to do a master lease with the pier, and then they also secured a hotel as well. The person that's actually on here, I'm going to be interviewing in a podcast, Steve Harrison. He's their director of auxiliary services, I believe, which housing falls under that. And we're going to be talking on a podcast that should come out in another week or so, just about what caused this for universities. So make sure you tune in for that. There's some more. University of Cincinnati. It just goes on and on. But hey, this one was great. I love this one. and leave it up to University of Utah to do something unique. But they were actually offering alumni to take in students into a living space and paying them $5,000 a semester. If that doesn't say community, I don't know what does. And then kind of the last thing here on August 21st, there was this Forbes article, and I'll put this out there as well because I think for a document to download. So yeah, all around, we've got schools that are overbooking. I think there's a lot of reasons behind it. A lot of people will talk about, it's somewhat related to what we're seeing with the pandemic going away. I don't know that that's necessarily it, and we'll talk more about that later. But first of all, I want to talk, John. Let me go to you first, and talk a little. Actually, I'm sorry, I got off track here a little bit. Let me refresh my memory on things here. So my first question, obviously these institutions are overbooking on-campus housing, and they're likely seeing, high occupancy off campus, and therefore students are trying to lock in housing quickly. But are you seeing this trend at other schools as well that aren't seeing the overbooking?
Yeah, I mean, our three largest markets are Purdue, Indiana University, and Virginia Tech, and we've had a lot of success at those markets. I would say when you get into the tier 2 and tier 3 markets defined by enrollment size, like Charlie mentioned earlier, they still seem to be much later markets. I mean, specifically referencing University of Memphis, Indiana State University. We're still leasing, well into May and June in those markets, even though we've had quite a bit of success in Memphis, and they have an enrollment increase this year. But some of the tier 2 and tier 3 have actually seen the adverse impact. So Indiana State at one point was around 13,000 students in 2015. They're just over 8,000 right now, and it's one of our toughest markets, and there's quite a bit of competition there. So whereas West Lafayette, IU, Bloomington, and Virginia Tech all had pretty significant enrollment increases this year, or the past couple of years, really, and we've had quite a bit of pre-leasing success going into it. Right now in West Lafayette, we're about 4% ahead of where we were last year, and that date is backdated by 2 weeks. So we're about 45% pre-leased for our pedestrian to campus, and West Lafayette, and about 25% and IU Bloomington.
Elena, we can go to you next.
Yeah. So we're also, seeing customers aggressively pursue housing options. We were pre-leased last year at 90% before June. So I think we're seeing that same thing, trend now. We're having very successful lease launches and priority days again this year. Students are wanting to lock in that lowest rate before they increase. And parents and guarantors, prepared themselves for that to happen. They're well aware of some of the significant increases that we're seeing across the country. So off-campus housing, because of the record-breaking leasing numbers we saw last season, we were able to learn a lot about our renter and what they want, and that they'll continue to make these decisions a lot earlier. We had...
What do they want, Elena?
Well, they want the transparency. They want us to be upfront about when those rates are going to increase. They're starting very early, Wes, with their search. They're all over our websites, all of our social media platforms, doing their due diligence to find where they want to live so that they can lock in that pricing. And so I think we'll continue to see that just, happen. They want to jump at the chance to lock in the best price. So
are they asking? Because in my mindset, it's, from a landlord perspective, when you talk about those rates going up, it's really determined on, velocity and how pre-leased you are. From a student's perspective, it's more of, hey, what date? And we don't know when that date's happening. So is there anything that you're doing to combat that, or are you just using it to build urgency?
Yep. So we're using it to create urgency. And I think it depends on the market, because not all markets, respond to deadlines. Some of them, we simply just have to let them know we have X amount of bed spaces left in a specific floor plan, and they hop all over that. But yeah, that language typically works really well to create the urgency. It's all about the price. So as long as we're transparent with when those rates are going to go up, if we know that in a specific market, or how many spots are left, I think that we'll continue to see them, want to lease faster.
Gotcha. Laura, how about you? Are you seeing it outside of, obviously we had the email from Ben that I read out, but schools that aren't overbooking, are you seeing this kind of urgency with those students as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the internal conversations we've been having is, yes, there's the housing shortages, and then there's not enough desirable housing. So not enough modern housing with Bed Bath parity and the true product that students want. I think that in addition to that, and Elena's kind of touching on it, you've got the impending recession and inflation, and prices just continue to rise. So I think parents have accepted the fact that rates are going up. And when you message, this is the low it's going to be, and then we're going to continue to increase prices from here, they expect it. And there's that rush to lock in at the best rates possible. So we're seeing that, Charlie touched on some of these markets, but Champaign, we're 74% pre-leased, 15% of prior year, and we are trending towards over a 10% rate increase. So we've already pushed rates there over 5 times. Similar situation in Lexington, we're 70% pre-leased, 43% ahead of this time last year.
Wow.
And trending towards a 7% increase.
Wow.
So Core did something interesting this year, and we've certainly tried it. I've tried this in other markets and in former roles, but they launched renewals on move-in day. And I think, again, the current climate, the economy, the inflation, like for parents to say, okay, I can sign now, be done with it, not have to worry about it, and this is the lowest option I'm going to have. I think that was a huge success and started us off really strong.
Gotcha. So that ties back into, my next question that I was going to ask you in regards to revenue management. In addition to Student Housing Insight, I also do asset management for some clients. And we even had a property that, it leased up kind of quick last year, but they started it on October 1st. And this year the manager, said, hey, I really think we need to start a week early. And just like, okay, whatever. And, I know he knows his market. So we said, let's go ahead and jump on it. And he reached 43% last week. And this is a tier 3 market that he's in. But we were supposed to meet every week to talk about, climbing that leasing ladder and triggering those different rental tiers. We had to meet 5 days straight to talk about it because that's just how quick everything was going. I'm just curious, how are you guys managing that?
Yeah, so I'll start with this one. So we actually recently, I joined the company about 6 weeks ago, and we recently went through a little bit of a restructure in terms of roles and responsibilities, and we created a whole new division focused solely on revenue optimization and leasing. So we have a managing director of revenue optimization, and her sole priority is looking at our rates and our tiers on a weekly basis and how are we optimizing our pricing strategy and where do we need to pivot. I think to Ashley's question in the panel, in the chat as to the panel's thoughts on using spots versus deadlines. Right now, we're doing a combination of both, but I think it's really important right now to be flexible. Don't over communicate in terms of quantities and deadlines and lock yourself into something when you have this opportunity to pivot and get a little more aggressive. So our revenue optimization team is analyzing this, looking at strategy, sending out weekly updates on where we need to push. And I think that's going to be a game changer, and something that's really important is to leave that flexibility and ability to pivot and continue to push.
Elena or John?
I'll go. So our teams are constantly watching their markets and how they're doing, how net effective rate is changing. And we're partnering with our clients to push past those tiers wherever we can. Our portfolio, like I said, we've seen some significant increases across the board. And so I think it's encouraging to the teams to see that, because, we're all about getting to the coin. So yes, when we have the opportunity to push, we will. But our teams monitor that every single week.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we meet weekly by market with the leasing team and the leadership team to determine, where are we at in comparison to recent history, which we try to document thoroughly. And conversely, if we get to a point where a certain property is trailing where it's historically been, obviously you have the opposite effect of needing to potentially lower rates, but we're not experiencing that right now. Everything's in question about, do we continue to raise? And obviously it's floor plan specific. Right now we're seeing a lot of our 3s and 4s fly off the shelf, and 1s typically go a little later for us, unless they're just in a great location. But I kind of like the idea of, securing spots versus deadlines, which is, we've seen a decent amount of success with that as well. But most of our stuff is just data driven based on current market conditions and historical leasing progress.
Yeah, a couple of things from the audience that have put in some questions, and also released a poll called "Have You Started Pre-leasing for Fall 23 Yet?" And so far, 18% have just said their renewal campaign. 18% said not yet, and 63% have said full steam ahead. So that gives you some indication. But also, the thing going back to the spots, Ashley Dukes, I believe is the last name. She asked, what are the panel's thoughts on using spots versus deadlines in marketing? So, John, you answered that question. Elena and Laura, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so we've done both. I think the primary strategy, to John's point, is really focused on tiers and quantities, but it's always helpful to have a deadline to push the message out to students and tie it to an event and really drive some momentum that way. Because sometimes quantities, it means nothing to them. They need to know, like, end of the month, you've got till the end of the month, or you've got till the 15th or whatever. So we definitely are using a combination of both.
Same. So totally agree with Laura. I think it depends on the market, depends on the property. And we do the same. Some of our properties, we use that deadline to create the urgency, but sometimes it doesn't work. And it's just much more beneficial to be able to say X amount of spots in the 4x2 or the 4x4 or whatever before, the rate will go up or we no longer have them. So it just depends on the market.
Gotcha. Well, John, I want to go back to that specific question that I kind of led with as we were, opening up this panel. And before I ask that, just want to, put out there to everybody, if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A. And also, if you want to come onto the virtual stage and ask our panel something or share with the audience how your property or how your company is doing with the leasing season this year, please do that. But John, like you said, you've got a mixed, portfolio where, we talk about going and buying, a new property somewhere. You guys, today you're in Blacksburg, I know, and you guys went into Blacksburg last year and actually bought a property management company. And so you're dealing in these different markets, both with scattered site, where it could be single family home, to small apartment buildings, to you guys also manage the annex portfolio, which is a lot of tier 3, but they're purpose-built student housing, typically 200 to 400 beds max. I'm just interested in finding out are you seeing anything between the different product types this year versus last year that's different?
Yeah, I mean, we're trending a little bit ahead, not significantly on some of the purpose-built properties in our large markets that's pedestrian to campus. Our largest property in West Lafayette is about 50% pre-leased, about 5 to 10% ahead of where it was last year. I would say we are seeing pretty considerable pace with anything above a 2-bed pedestrian to campus in our top tier markets. 1 beds or non-pedestrian seems to be leasing kind of on pace where it was last year, maybe a little bit ahead. And rental rate increases probably about 7% plus. The tier 2, tier 3 markets, I mean, we just have really always, at least the ones we're in, have struggled to get much momentum at the same timing that we're seeing in places like a Purdue, IU, or Virginia Tech. Maybe it's because in some of these markets like Indiana State, there's more supply than there is demand, which is not the case in a lot of our other markets. Memphis, we got to 100% in Memphis, but it was super slow. I mean, it's almost like it's an afterthought for housing when they come back from winter break. So, and then the tier 3 markets, some of those take off a lot faster than others, and typically it's purpose-built stuff that's close to campus, but oftentimes it's not in competition with anything. Sometimes we're in competition with a couple single-family houses in that market, but the enrollment at these places is maybe 5,000 students. So they're quite a bit different in demand and timing. But our tier 1 markets, especially this year, but the past couple of years, have really been strong early out the gate.
Gotcha. Well, guys, again, I want to open it up for any questions. I haven't seen anything come through the Q&A or anybody raise your hand, but if you've got questions or want to comment, would love to hear what you've got to say. But another question that I had for the panel is, have you set any kind of, I guess, predetermined deadline as to that may have been different, maybe not necessarily in July, but maybe, going back to June and thinking, and Laura, I know this is a little bit different for you because you were on vacation all summer.
Yep.
But, when you're thinking about, okay, in June, this is, I'm putting together my marketing plan, this is how we're going to come out of the gate. And, you want to be, X at this particular property or across the portfolio by such and such a date. Have you guys drastically changed that at all based on what you've seen in the past, 3 or 4 weeks?
Yeah, so I think across the board, because our sites are, having larger lead targets and lease targets, renewal targets earlier, we're doing that as a portfolio. So all of those benchmarks, obviously, we'll see velocity a lot faster in because of our success that we had this last year and what we're seeing now. We've been able to adjust not only that target-wise, but also our strategy. So our renewal strategy and our new leasing strategy in some of the early markets, we've been able to just kind of launch and deploy some of those tactics earlier to try to get some of that. A really good example is that we have an early renewal incentive program. It's called the Insider Club. In our properties, some of our properties were able to launch that, at least 30 days prior to when they did last year, this time, to drive that renewal, kick. So, I think we'll continue to see that. But most importantly, people they're lined up, they're ready, they want to secure their same spot, all of that. So it's working that we started earlier. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Gotcha. Well, we do have a guest that just joined us, Adam Barley with the Price Company. How are you doing, Adam?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. So yeah, I don't know if you've got a question or if you just want to.
No, I figured I'd just get on and share some of our sort of story to reinforce a little bit about what Laura and John and Elena have said. We're seeing similar things, but I think what's really cool about our stuff is that, we're about 20% or so pre-leased, which is about 5% or so ahead of where we were at this time last year. I've been telling all of my folks when it comes to rate increases that this year, 10 is the new 5, right? So if you were going to get 5 last year, this year you're expected to get 10. And so that's the type of rent increases that we're seeing in some of these major primary markets. And, our average is probably going to be somewhere around 6.5, but we have some older garden style stuff versus some new high-rise, pedestrian right across the street from campus. But what's really interesting is that I don't think I have any properties at 20% pre-leased. I either have them at 0, or they haven't even started, or I have them at 65, 75, 85% pre-leased already. So some of these properties we've had to shut off online leasing for an hour or two until we can really get things and figure out where we are on a day. You talk about daily tiers. We were doing hourly tiers for a couple properties. So that's sort of the theme of this year's leasing so far.
Gotcha. Well, really quick, I've got a question here from Nick Kaminsky. He says, how is the age of the property impact? And I'm sorry, Nick, my screen is really far away from me. But I believe you're asking how's the age of the property impacting leasing this year, which is that I have seen some properties in the past couple of weeks that, that they're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And, they're talking about record leasing, for the, first time in 3 or 4 years. So yeah. Have you guys got any comments on the age of the property at all?
For us, Wes, we have a wide range. So I think it's a good position for us to speak in. And it's all about market. I mean, for example, in Clemson, we have a 20-year-old property that's 4 miles away from campus that's already, almost 30% pre-leased, and that deal has never been that far ahead. So there's nothing special about it either. And so people need a spot to live in the Clemson market, and it doesn't matter. They're going for where they want to go, and ultimately age. It helps if you're new, obviously, but some of these stories you're seeing about people camping out for properties, they're not brand new, right? I mean, so it's just all about, location, reputation, and then just market urgency. So,
gotcha. I've got a question from Randall Paulison to the group. Has anyone else seen Greek life bounce back? I'm assuming he just means the fraternities and sororities, or maybe you're talking about the housing specifically, Randy, but said we are noticing larger recruiting classes bouncing back from COVID. Yeah, is that helping at all with driving any of the traffic? Anybody notice anything with that?
I don't know that I've noticed it necessarily increasing traffic as much as, I mean, we do get benefited when a fraternity gets kicked off campus, which, is unfortunate when that happens, but it does seem to create a funnel. And once they're in, if they like where they're living, they're more likely to recruit their friends. But I mean, the IU Bloomington market has a large Greek community, and I think there is record enrollments in some of those houses that they can't house everybody that's in the fraternity or sorority. So I think we do benefit from that, but I'm not sure what the number is.
Yeah, I would agree with John, and I think maybe even more impactful to occupancy and just post-COVID rebounding is the return of international students. I was in Seattle this weekend, where we have a high international population, and we were doing a move in there, and I don't have exact data to this, although I'm curious where we are versus where we were in 2020 and 2021. It feels like that population has returned, which I think is going to help tremendously.
So I know we're at the top of the hour here. I've got one more question from Teresa Zapatas at RPM. She mentions currently an article that's out there, I think from Madison, Wisconsin, about just students becoming vocal about the frustration of rents increasing so much. What kind of feedback are you guys getting when it comes to rates and affordability?
Well, one thing we did early on, and I thought that this was really smart, was send out a letter basically educating the residents about increases to come and kind of the state of rental rates across the country. So we preempted that. I think you're going to have that across the board. I think, to Ashley's other point here in the chat, I think you're going to get pushback when you're an older property with maybe some deferred maintenance or no big capital strategy to kind of justify it. But I think for us, it was being proactive and communicating and educating residents. So we haven't seen that per se, but we're still early.
Yeah. Elena?
Same. So I haven't really seen it hasn't been crazy pushback, but like we talked about earlier in the conversation, I think parents and guarantors were expecting this because of inflation, because of what's happening everywhere. And so I don't think people have been pushing back much for us. They just, like I said, as long as we're being transparent about when those increases are going to happen as best we can, typically, I don't think we've gotten many complaints.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, I appreciate it so much. I know we could talk about this for probably another hour, and we're getting some pretty good feedback in the chat now. But we've got to end it for the day. So, panel, I appreciate you guys coming on. Adam, thanks for coming in as well. A couple of just closing announcements for you guys. One, make sure that you are sharing ShopTalk with your colleagues and ask them to register. Want to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing, and this is a time for the industry to kind of come together each month and talk about what's happening. So if you've got colleagues that don't know about ShopTalk, make sure that you share that with them. The next ShopTalk is going to be Thursday, November 10th. It is going to move to Thursday for November because November 8th is election day. And I know many of the companies are now giving employees off for election day. And we wanted to obviously consider that and how that may play into someone's decision to attend or to vote. So we will be doing that on Thursday, November 10th. Again, guys, the replay on this will be up on our website.